remained silent. "We weren't planning to introduce you tonight." My father said it the way he'd announced the price of a truck. He was holding a plastic cup of punch, looking past me at the banner behind the cake, 50 years on Route 29 Hollister Ford, like it was the only thing in the room that had earned the right to be there. Calvin's cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Patricia's hands stopped folding the napkin. The woman from the local paper studied her shoes. Across the floor, near a pickup nobody was looking at, a man my father had sold trucks to for 40 years went very still. He lifted his eyes once. He found mine. He nodded the smallest nod a person can make. I nodded back. My father did not see. I wish I could tell you the next hour felt good. It didn't. I had driven up from Norfolk that morning, 47 minutes early to the showroom, because 32 years in the Navy had taught me that early is on time. I had been preparing for my father to say something like that since I was 17 years old. The preparation had not made it way less, just differently. To understand why my father said what he said, and why the old man near the pickup would say something very different before the night was over. You have to go back to a Tuesday morning in 1986, in this same town when I was 17. The guidance counselor's office at Heritage High had a window that faced the parking lot. I remember because my father was in the parking lot, sitting in his Ford with the engine running, pretending he wasn't waiting for me. He had said he was running an errand. I had said okay. We both knew. The counselor was a woman named Mrs. Hagstrom, who wore reading glasses on a chain and chewed peppermints the whole period. She tapped the folder I'd brought. "Naval Academy, yes ma'am. You know they didn't take women until 1976. Yes ma'am. You know your father didn't sign the recommendation form." "I know." She looked at me for a long second. Then she pulled a pen out of a coffee mug full of pens, and she signed where my father was supposed to sign. "Tell him I forged it," she said. "I'll back you up. I never did. I let my father believe whatever he wanted to believe about how that form got submitted. He never asked." That was the first thing I learned about the rest of my life. Sometimes the people who help you most are not the people you live with. I drove east across the country to attend plebe summer at Annapolis 4 months later. My father did not come to drop me off. My mother sent a casserole. The casserole arrived 3 days after I did. The Navy gave me a career I did not know I was allowed to want. It gave me a destroyer command at 39 and a strike group flag at 52. It gave me a back injury that announces itself every time the barometric pressure drops, and a 4-inch scar across the inside of my right wrist from a parted cable on a frigate in 1998 that I have never fully explained to anyone, including David, when we were married. The Navy took my marriage. It took a pregnancy I never told my parents about. It took the years when my mother got sick, the years when I should have been home and was not. I retired the first Friday in March of 2024. I drove from Norfolk to a clapboard cottage. I had bought sight unseen along the South River outside Annapolis. The cottage came with a porch swing that needed restringing and a kitchen window that looked out at the water. The first thing I did when I walked in was take off the uniform. The second thing I did was stand at the window for 45 minutes without moving. People imagine retirement from command as a relief. It is not a relief. It is a kind of grief you don't have a vocabulary for. The text from my father came on a Wednesday in late September, 3 weeks before his 80th birthday party. "Margaret, tonight is not the night to bring up the Navy. Some of these people have known me since I was a boy. They don't need to be confused." I read it twice. Then I put the phone face down on the kitchen counter and walked out to the porch, where I sat with one hand on the railing for a long time. The river was high that day from a late summer storm. A heron stood on the floating dock with its wings half open, drying. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried about my father in close to 40 years. It wasn't that I was hard. It was that I had run out of the kind of tears my father could produce. Some pipes go dry, you learn which ones, and you stop turning the handle. I almost wrote back. I drafted 3 different replies in the Notes app and deleted all 3. The version that almost survived was this one. "I have known you since I was a girl. I am not confused." I deleted it because I did not want him to feel hit. After all those years, I still did not want him to feel hit. That is the part of all of this I am most ashamed of, looking back. Around 9 that night, my phone lit up. Linda Ortega. Master Chief, retired, 10 years older than me, 50 pounds of opinions in a 120-pound frame. "Maggie, Linda, you're going to that dealership thing in 3 weeks. How did you?" Calvin friended me on Facebook last winter. God knows why. I see the dealership posts. Are you going? I don't know. You're going. Linda, you spent your whole career standing in rooms where people pretended they couldn't see you. Don't start hiding now. That was the line that did it. The same line, more or less, that another retired Master Chief had said to a different admiral, in a different town for a different reason. The Navy ran on the same 6 sentences from its senior enlisted, repeated to whoever needed to hear them. They were old sentences. They worked. I'll think about it. You'll go. I went. I packed a navy blazer and a pair of dark slacks. I packed a small enamel pin round, deep blue with no lettering on the front. The pin had been given to me by a senior chief named Daniel Reyes in 2013. After a long week in a courtroom, none of us were supposed to talk about. The pin meant something to maybe 200 people on the planet. I had worn it once a year since. I did not pack the dress whites. I did not pack the medals. I packed civilian clothes and a pin nobody would recognize, and I drove south. I stopped in Norfolk on the morning of the party because I had unfinished business at the base, a retirement signature that had gotten lost in the mail. I had breakfast at a diner I used to go to as a lieutenant, where the waitress called everybody on. I ate eggs with hot sauce. I did not look at my phone. The drive from Norfolk to Lynchburg takes you across some of the prettier farmland in Virginia. Soy fields, dairy operations, white wooden churches with signs out front that say things like forgiveness. Is a decision not a feeling? The radio in the rental car cut in and out. I let it cut in and out. I crossed the James River around 2:30. I crossed back into the south of my childhood. The hills got taller. The barns got older. There is a billboard outside Amherst that has been there since I was 10 years old, advertising a restaurant that has been closed for 20 years. The billboard is still standing. I took that as a sign, though, of what I couldn't have told you. I reached Hollister Ford on Route 29 at 3:13 p.m. The party was set to start at 4. 47 minutes early. I sat in the rental car in the lot for 10 of those minutes. Then I checked the pin in the rearview mirror, adjusted the collar of the blazer, and walked across the asphalt toward the showroom doors. I had no idea, walking in, that a man I had not seen in 30 years was about to recognize me from the lapel pin alone. The showroom smelled like wax and new vinyl, and the particular kind of catered chicken that has been sitting in chafing dishes for too long. Someone had strung lights from the rafters. Someone had wheeled a tiered cake out to the showroom floor. The cake had a model F-150 on top, hand-painted, with 1974224 in icing. Calvin spotted me before I'd cleared the doorway. He came across the floor in long strides, the way he'd always moved when he wanted to control a situation. Calvin was 3 years younger than me and 40 pounds heavier than he should have been. He wore a navy sport coat that was either new or had been let out at the seams. He hugged me in the way you hug a cousin you don't see often. "Margaret, you made it. I made it. You drove? From Norfolk. Long drive." "Not really." He stepped back. His eyes moved over the blazer, the pin, the absence of anything obviously military. I watched him decide how to feel. "Listen," he said. "Patricia's got you at table 6. Dad's at the head with the mayor and the dealerships association people. We thought you'd be more comfortable not in the center of all of that." "Of course. Table 6 is near the bar, though, so that's fine, Calvin." He patted my upper arm twice and went to find someone else to manage. Table 6 was against the back wall, next to the bar, next to the men's room door. I sat down on a folding chair that wobbled. The chair across from me was empty. The chair next to me belonged to a woman I had never met, who was already 3 glasses into something pink. Aunt Loretta found me before I'd finished arranging my napkin. Loretta was my father's older sister. She'd been the family beauty in 1958, and she had not stopped reminding people since. She kissed the air beside my cheek and sat down opposite me. "There you are." "Hi, Aunt Loretta." She studied me. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice and tapped 2 fingers on her own lapel. "I wouldn't wear that pin tonight, sweetheart. Some people might not understand." I looked at her. She had not seen me in 11 years. The pin was the size of a dime. She had walked across a room to tell me to remove it. What might they not understand? You know what I mean. I don't, actually. "Margaret." She put a hand on my wrist on the side where the scar was, though she did not know about the scar. "Don't make this evening about you." I did not move my wrist away. I let her hand stay there. I felt the cool metal of her wedding rings against my skin. I looked at her until she removed her hand on her own. "You haven't changed," she said. She said it like a verdict. "No," I said. "I haven't." She left to find better company. The woman in the pink drink did not look up. A man who looked 65 and wore bass loafers came over to my table around 4:10. He was holding a plate with 3 cubes of cheese and a pretzel. "He had a name tag on that," said Frank. "Are you from out of town?" "Yes. You drove all the way up for this? Wendell must mean a lot to you." "He's my father." Frank put a cube of cheese in his mouth. He chewed once. He stopped chewing. "I'm sorry, Wendell Hollister?" "Yes. I have known Wendell since 1991. I did not know he had a daughter." He said it without malice. He said it the way you say a fact that has just rearranged itself in front of you. He had bought trucks from my father for over 30 years, and they had not, in 3 decades of conversations across a service counter, mentioned that I existed. "I have a sister who teaches school in Lynchburg," he said, looking for footing. "That's nice." "Ah, yes." He left to find someone he could be more comfortable with. The slideshow started at 4:15. It played on 2 large screens mounted above the parts counter. 50 years of the dealership, set to a music bed of John Mellencamp and Bob Seger. My grandfather opening the doors in 1974. My father in 1981 next to a Bronco. My father in 1995 holding a toddler that was probably one of Calvin's. The dealership winning a Regional Ford Award in 2003. The dealership at its 25th anniversary. Calvin at his college graduation. Calvin's wedding. Calvin's children. Calvin standing next to my father in front of a row of F-150s last spring. I was not in any of the photos. I did not expect to be. I had told myself, somewhere around the 3rd or 4th photo, that I had not expected to be. I sat with my hands in my lap and counted my own breathing. The slideshow ended. The lights came up. My father walked to a small portable lectern they had set up near the cake. He had aged in a way I had not been ready to see. His hair, which had been salt and pepper at my mother's funeral 4 years earlier, had gone all the way white. He stooped when he walked now. He kept one hand on the lectern for balance. He cleared his throat once. The room quieted. 50 years, he said. 50 years on Route 29. Applause. My father built this place with his hands and a small business loan from First Citizens. He told me one thing about it. He said, "A dealership is not a building. A dealership is a promise." Murmurs of approval. An old man near the front nodded along. I have tried to keep that promise. More applause. He talked for 9 minutes. He named the long-serving employees by their first names. He named the dealership association president by his nickname. He named a county commissioner, who was not present but who had sent a letter. He named my mother Eleanor, gone now 4 years, and his voice cracked a little. The room made the sympathetic sound rooms make. He named Calvin. My son Calvin has been here at the dealership since he could see over the parts counter. He has run the service bay. He has run the lot. He has run the finance office. He has worked harder than I ever worked. He is the future of this dealership. He is the future of this name on this road. When I am gone, this place is in his hands. The applause was loud. Calvin stood and waved. My father did not name me. I want to be careful with this part, because I don't want to overstate it. He had not promised he would name me. He had told me not to make it about myself. By his own logic, the omission was a kindness. But there is a thing that happens when you sit in a room of 200 people, and a public ledger is read out and you are not on the ledger. You become a kind of unperson for the duration of the reading. The people next to you forget you are there. You forget you are there. You are a chair that nobody is sitting in. I sat very still in my chair. My father came down off the lectern to a standing ovation. He moved slowly down the line of dealership employees, shaking hands. He moved toward the bar to find a cup of punch. He saw me on the way. He didn't slow down. He shifted course 3 feet to come past my table. He had a plastic cup of punch in his right hand. The cup was half full. This is the moment the night opened with. This is where the story I started telling you started. I have been telling around the edges of it, because if you say it head on, it makes a sound a person who has been raised polite is not supposed to make. "We weren't planning to introduce you tonight." He set it down at me. I was seated. He was standing. His shadow fell across the wobbling table. "I know, Dad. I just some of these people. I know. It would have been, I know." He looked at me for half a second longer than he needed to. Then he moved past, toward the bar, toward the cake, toward the gravitational center of a room he had spent 50 years building to revolve around himself. That was when I saw the man at the F-150. He was tall and thin, and wearing a sport coat that had been good once, and was no longer. He had set his plastic cup of punch on the hood of the truck. He was looking at me. He had been looking at me, I realized for a while. I had not seen him because I had been looking at my father. He saw the pin. I watched him see the pin. His mouth did not move. His face did not change. But his eyes did the thing eyes do when they recognize a number on a door they have not seen in a long time. His hand came up. He nodded. The smallest nod a person can make. I nodded back. My father did not see. I did not know yet who the man was. I would not know until later. But I knew from the nod that I was no longer alone in the room. I needed 2 minutes alone. I excused myself from the woman in the pink drink who did not notice. I walked toward the back hallway of the showroom, past the parts counter, past the service desk, past the door that said "Employees Only" in faded vinyl letters that had been on that door since I was a child. The hallway smelled like motor oil and old coffee. The carpet had a strip worn down the middle from 40 years of work boots. The door to my father's office stood ajar. About 4 inches. I was not trying to listen. I was trying to find the women's room. I was passing the doorway with my hand already raised to push past the next door, when I heard the voice of the woman from the local paper. "And how would you describe Margaret then, your older daughter?" My father's voice. Calm, conversational. Margaret was always the difficult one. We never expected much. A pause. In what sense is difficult? Strong-willed, hard to talk to. Joined the service against her mother's wishes. Hasn't been a real part of this town for a long time. I stopped with my hand still in the air. The reporter Beth, I think her name was, said something I couldn't quite make out. My father said something back. I heard the soft scratch of a pen on paper. I was 57 years old in that hallway. I had been a 22-year-old ensign in that hallway, and a 38-year-old commander, and a 51-year-old admiral, and a 57-year-old retired woman with a 4-inch scar and a porch swing. All of those women were standing in that hallway at the same time. A young waiter came around the corner, carrying a tray of empty plastic cups. He saw my face. He froze for half a second. I shook my head once. He kept walking. I did not push the door open. I did not interrupt. I did not announce myself. I turned around and walked back up the hallway and back into the showroom. I went to the bar. The bartender, a kid maybe 22, looked up. "Soda water with a lemon wedge." "Yes, ma'am." I took it and turned my back to the room. I stood with the soda water in my left hand and my right hand flat on the bar. I made myself count to 30. Then I made myself count to 30 again. I thought about my mother. My mother had called me 3 weeks before she died. She had been on a lot of morphine. She had said one sentence I had carried with me ever since. "Maggie, your father loves you. He just doesn't know how to say the things he never learned how to say." I had forgiven my mother that night for everything. She had given me the only key she had to a door she had never been able to open herself. My father did not get that key, not in that hallway, not over a soda water, not yet, maybe not ever. I drank the soda water slowly. 2 stools down, a man in a sport coat I had seen before, set his cup down on the bar and looked at the side of my face. He did not speak. He was not in a hurry. I would learn his name in about 3 minutes. A young woman approached me at the bar. She was maybe 19. She wore a green dress and flat shoes, and her hair was pulled back the way they teach you to pull it back at the Naval Academy. She stopped about 6 feet away. "Ma'am," I turned. "You're Admiral Hollister, not a question." I'm retired now." She did not extend a hand. She held herself in a way I recognized. "My name is Midshipman Reyes, Sophia. I'm 2nd class at the Academy. Pleased to meet you. Your photograph is in Bancroft Hall. 3rd floor, the corridor, near the wardroom. It was taken at your change of command for Strike Group 2. I looked at her. "My father served under you. What is your father's name?" "Senior Chief Daniel Reyes." I had not heard the name spoken aloud in 11 years. I set the soda water down on the bar. "Daniel is here?" She nodded toward the punch table. A man was watching us. Mid-50s, square-shouldered, the kind of posture you cannot buy and cannot fake. He was looking at me without smiling, because smiling was not the right tool for the moment. He set down his plate. He walked across the showroom floor. He stopped in front of me. He did not salute. We were both in civilian clothes in a Ford dealership at a birthday party. He held out his hand. Admiral, Daniel, it's been a while, 11 years. Sophia got into the academy 2 years ago. I told her if she ever saw you, she should introduce herself. You taught her well. He looked over my shoulder. He looked at the punch table where my father stood. He looked back at me. Will you excuse me 1 minute, ma'am? Daniel, 1 minute. I do not know exactly what Daniel Reyes said to my father in the 120 seconds that followed. I have asked him twice since then. He will not tell me. He will only say that my father listened, and that my father set down the cup of punch he was holding, and that my father did not say anything when Daniel was finished. When Daniel walked back across the floor, my father's face was the color of newspaper that has been left in the sun. It was at that moment that the woman from the local paper came out of the back hallway. Beth with the notebook. She saw me at the bar. She stopped. Her professional face came on her face the way a lamp comes on. Excuse me, Admiral Hollister? I looked at her. I'm sorry to interrupt. I covered a Pentagon press conference 2 years ago on the Sudan humanitarian extractions. You spoke. I have a recording of it on my phone right now, actually. The room was beginning to notice the gathering at the bar. Heads turned. Conversations went a quarter volume softer. I'd love to do a sit-down with you tomorrow morning, if you'd be open to it. I'm driving home tomorrow morning, even 15 minutes. No, ma'am, but thank you. She nodded once, professional, not insulted. She wrote something on her pad. She backed away. That was when the old man at the F-150 stood up. He walked from the back of the showroom across the entire floor. He moved slowly, but he did not hesitate. He stopped 2 feet from me. He smelled like Old Spice and wood smoke. He raised his right hand and rested it on my left shoulder. Light. The way you would touch the shoulder of someone you had thought about a long time. Thank you, Admiral. 6 words. The room heard him. The room knew. My father heard him too. His name was Walter Crowe. He was 76 years old. He had served 2 tours in Vietnam, 10 months in I Corps and 8 months at a brown water station on the Mekong. He had bought his first Ford from my father in 1977. He had bought his last one, a 2019 F-250, that he still drove from Calvin. He had been a customer of Hollister Ford for 47 years. He did not let go of my shoulder right away. He waited until he was sure I had not embarrassed myself by reacting. Then he let go. You won't remember me, he said. But I remember you. How? My godson was the translator your team waited for in Sudan in 2011. He's named after me. He works for the State Department now. He has 2 little girls. I did not say anything. I could not have and would not have if I could have. 200 miles into a place we shouldn't have been, Walter Crowe said. And your team waited an extra 11 hours to bring him out. There were people in the Pentagon who said you should not have. I was in the room when one of them said it. I told him he didn't know what he was talking about. I closed my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, Daniel Reyes had come to stand next to Walter. Sophia was a half step behind her father. Across the showroom, Calvin stood with both hands at his sides, like a man who had walked into the wrong room. Daniel turned to Calvin. I served under your sister for 6 years. In 2013, an administrative investigation was opened against me. It was based on a false statement by someone I had reported for misconduct. Your sister went through every paragraph of the file on her own time. She produced records nobody else could find. The investigation was closed. I kept my career. I kept my marriage. My wife and I kept custody of our daughter. That girl right there. He nodded at Sophia. Your sister did all of that without asking me to thank her. Calvin did not respond. Calvin had stopped moving. Sophia stepped forward. Sir, with respect. There is a photograph of your sister in the 3rd floor corridor of Bancroft Hall. There are 4 photographs of women admirals on that wall. She is one of them. Every plebe who walks past that wall knows her name. She was speaking to Calvin, but her eyes were on my father, who had come to a stop a few feet behind Calvin. I have walked past that wall every morning for 2 years, Sophia said. And I have looked at her face every morning. And I have not had the first idea that she was someone I would meet at a Ford dealership in Lynchburg. My father did not speak. The room did not speak. Walter Crowe turned, slow and deliberate, to face my father. He did not raise his voice. He spoke at the volume 2 old men in a dealership might use to discuss a transmission problem. Wendell, I have bought 10 trucks from this family. I have known you since you were 35 years old. I will never tell you how to talk to your own daughter. He paused. But the next time you are standing next to her, you are standing next to a woman who has carried more weight than anybody in this room has any business imagining. He turned back to me. He took his hand off my shoulder. He nodded one more time, the same small nod from before, and he walked away to find his coat. The whole showroom was watching. My father stood in the middle of the floor with both his hands empty. I had imagined a moment like that for 30 years. I had imagined it in 100 different rooms. I had imagined the version where my father wept. I had imagined the version where my mother apologized. I had imagined the version where Calvin called me and said the words. I had never imagined this version. The version where nobody said anything at all. The version where the silence did the work the apology was supposed to do. The party did not so much end as drain. The dealership association people made their excuses first. The mayor's wife pleaded a babysitter. A retired autoglass distributor I had never met came over to shake my hand and tell me his nephew had served on a destroyer and that he would tell his nephew he had met me. I thanked him. He moved off. Aunt Loretta found her purse and held it in front of her like a shield. She did not approach me again that night. The woman in the pink drink had switched to white wine. She raised her glass at me from across the room. It might have been a toast. It might have been an apology. It might have been the wine. Patricia put a hand on Calvin's back and tried to walk him toward the office. Calvin did not move. He kept looking at the spot of carpet where Daniel Reyes had been standing, as if there were still something written on it. Beth, the reporter, found me one more time before she left. Admiral, off the record, I have to ask, go ahead. Did you know what your father was going to say about you? Tonight. I knew the shape of it. He told me you were difficult. He did. I'm not going to print that. I looked at her. Print whatever you want. I'm not going to print that, she said again. It isn't true. I can hear it isn't true. I am not going to print a lie because somebody who is having a hard week said it. She closed her notebook. She offered her hand. I shook it. For what it's worth, she said. I covered the Sudan extractions. I sat in the press pool for the Pentagon briefing. There were 3 of us in that room who knew what those extractions cost. The other 2 have left the business. I am the only one left who remembers. She left her business card on the bar. The catering staff began collecting the plastic cups. My father had retreated to a folding chair near the cake. He sat with both hands on his knees and looked out the showroom's plate glass window at the parking lot. The parking lot lights had come on. The light made his face look older than he was. I did not approach him. Sophia Reyes came to say goodbye before she and her father drove back to Norfolk. She offered her hand. I took it. Ma'am, Sophia, thank you for what you did tonight. I didn't do anything tonight. You did, ma'am, with respect. I have been at the academy for 2 years, and I have been waiting to see what it looks like when someone holds her ground in a room that does not want her. I just saw it. I needed to see it. I held her hand a second longer than military protocol allowed. She did not pull away. Stand your ground, I said. The recognition comes when it comes. Yes, ma'am. She walked away to find her father. Daniel stopped at the door, found my eyes across the room, brought his right hand to the brim of an imaginary cover, and tapped it once. Old habit. He went out. Walter Crowe was already gone. By 9:15 the showroom was nearly empty. 2 catering kids were loading the dishwasher in the back. The slideshow was still cycling frozen, then unfreezing, then frozen again, on a photograph from 1993 of my mother holding a birthday cake. Calvin came over. He stood next to my chair without sitting. He held a plastic cup he was not drinking from. Margaret, Calvin, I didn't know, I didn't know any of that about Reyes, about Sudan, about the wall at the academy. You didn't ask, he flinched. That wasn't a barb, I said. I am not in the habit of barbs. You didn't ask. That is the actual fact. He never said anything. He couldn't have. He didn't know. Calvin started to say something else. He stopped. He started again. Why didn't you tell me? Any of it. I tried. When? I had to think. I had to be honest. 1998. I called you after the cable incident on the frigate. I told you I had been hurt. You said you would call me back the next day. You didn't. I stopped trying around then. I don't remember that call. I do. He absorbed that. He did not argue. He did not apologize. He absorbed it. That was the most adult thing he had done in front of me in 15 years. Calvin processed this for a long time. He's going to need help getting home tonight, he said finally. I'll drive him. Then I'll come back and lock up. You can lock up now if you'd rather. No, I want to come back. All right. He nodded. He hesitated. He went to find Patricia. The showroom went very quiet. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed the way fluorescent lights have hummed in every showroom I have ever stood in. I could hear the ice maker behind the bar. I could hear the soft thrum of a refrigerator in the office hallway. I could hear my own breathing. I knew what came next, the way you know what comes next at sea when the wind shifts. There was one conversation left in the room. The room would not let me leave until I had it. I waited. He came over without his cup of punch. He sat down in the folding chair across from me. The chair creaked under him in a way it had not creaked under Aunt Loretta. He looked older sitting than he had looked standing. He kept his hands flat on his knees. Calvin's gone to bring the car around. I know. I asked him to give us a minute. I know. He did not look at me. He looked at the showroom floor between his shoes. The floor was polished concrete the color of pewter. There was a small crack in it that ran from the legs of his chair to the legs of mine. I tried to write a speech for you. I did not say anything. I tried to write one for the party, for tonight. I sat at the kitchen table on Sunday for 3 hours with a yellow legal pad, and I could not write the first sentence. I believe you. I never could write about you. Even before, when you were a little girl. Your mother used to bring me a card to sign on your birthday. She would write the inside, and I would just sign. I never could write the inside. I thought there was time. I let the silence sit. I want to tell you something, he said. I have not told this to a person on the earth. Your mother did not know. I'm listening. I applied to the Naval Academy in the fall of 1965. He said it to the crack in the concrete. I was 18 years old. I had a guidance counselor named Mr. Kearns. He told me I had a chance. He helped me put the package together. My father did not know. I did not tell him. I mailed it from a post office in Charlottesville, so the postmark would not be Lynchburg. He stopped. He waited. He went on. I got the rejection letter 3 weeks before Christmas. Math scores. They were too low. They gave me a courteous letter. I burned it in the wood stove that night. I never told anybody. Dad, let me finish. I let him finish. 21 years later, you brought me a form. You wanted me to sign it. I knew what the form was. I knew where you wanted to go. I knew you would get in. I told your mother that night you were going to break our hearts. What I meant was, I could not bear to sign that form. Mrs. Hagstrom signed it. I knew. I looked at him. His head was still down. You knew the whole time. You knew it was Mrs. Hagstrom. I knew. I never said anything because if I said anything, you would have known I had read the form before I refused to sign it. And I could not bear for you to know that. The room hummed. The ice maker dropped a load of ice into a bin. When you got your acceptance letter in May of 1986, he said, your mother brought it home from the post office and put it on this counter, that counter behind us, in this office because she didn't want to leave it in a mailbox a thief could reach into. I sat at that counter with the letter for 2 hours before you got home from school. I read it 3 times. I put it back in the envelope. I left it where she had set it. I went out to the parking lot and sat in my truck until you came home. He looked up for the first time. I have been ashamed of myself, he said, in this dealership every day for 38 years. He stopped. He pressed both palms together. He spoke again. There is a photograph of you at your destroyer commissioning in 2007. Your mother had it printed for the desk in this office. I took it out of the frame after she put it up. I told her I would put it in the safe so it wouldn't fade. I left it in the safe for 11 years. She knew. She let me lie to her about it. She put a different photograph on the desk. She never said one word. He looked up. After she died, I went to the safe. The photograph was still where I put it. I have not been able to take it out. I have not been able to throw it away. He stopped again. He did not weep. He did not crumple. He did not say the words I had once imagined he would say. He said one sentence more. I don't know how to fix this, Margaret. I waited until I was sure my voice would hold. You don't fix it, Dad. You acknowledge it. He nodded once, slow. I was wrong. I know. I did not say I forgave him. I did not say I was proud of him for telling me. I did not say it was all right. It was not all right. It was something else. I stood up. My right knee complained the way it had complained for 15 years. I straightened my blazer. I touched the pin on my lapel once, lightly, to make sure it had stayed straight. Lock up when you're done. I walked across the showroom floor. I did not look back. The drive back to Annapolis took 6.5 hours. I drove through the dark first, then through the slow blue dawn that comes up over the Blue Ridge in the hour before the sun. I stopped once outside Charlottesville at a gas station, with a flickering sign and a coffee pot that had been on too long. I bought the coffee anyway. I sat in the rental car with the engine off, drinking it, watching the sky go from indigo to pewter to a soft gold along the eastern ridge. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. A text, Sophia. Ma'am, I saw everything. Thank you for showing me what it looks like. I held the phone in my hand for a long time before I answered. Stand your ground, I wrote back. The recognition comes when it comes. She wrote back almost immediately. Aye, ma'am. I set the phone face down on the seat. I drove east as the sun came up. The light caught the dew on the soy fields and made the whole landscape look briefly, improbably young. A line of starlings lifted off a power line and reformed 3 poles down. A red-tailed hawk sat on a fence post and let me pass without looking up. I thought about what Walter Crowe had said. I had carried more weight than anyone in that room had any business imagining. He had said it kindly. He had also said it true. I had not realized until he said it how much I had wanted somebody to see the weight, not the medals, not the rank, not the photograph in Bancroft Hall, the weight. A funny thing about recognition, you spend your whole life thinking you don't need it. You learn to do without it because nobody is offering it. You build a life on top of not needing it. And then somebody offers it, in a Ford dealership, with their hand on your shoulder, and you find out you needed it all along. You find out you have needed it for 40 years. You find out the not needing was a kind of bone splint you have been wearing under your clothes the whole time. I undid the pin from my lapel, somewhere west of Richmond. I set it on the dashboard. The morning sun came through the windshield and lit the enamel, and the round dark blue of it became, for a minute, the exact color of the deep water you see from the bridge of a ship at the start of a long crossing. It had taken my father 60 years to tell me about Annapolis 1965. It had taken him almost 40 to be ashamed of himself in his own office. He had told me. He had not told me in the way I had wanted, and he had not said the sentence I had wanted, and he was probably not going to. But he had told me. He had used the word wrong. Some apologies are the size of the wound. Most are not. Most apologies are smaller than the wound. The question is not whether they are the right size. The question is whether you let the smaller apology do the work it can do, or whether you wait for the apology that fits, which may never arrive. I let the smaller apology do its work. By the time I reached the South River, the sun was up over the water. My porch swing was where I had left it. The kitchen window faced the same way it had faced when I left. A heron was on the floating dock, drying its wings. I made coffee. I sat on the porch with the cup on the railing. I watched the river move under the morning light. I did not turn on my phone. My phone, when I finally turned it on around 11, had 4 messages, one from Linda Ortega, 1 word. Well, 2 from Calvin. He had stayed at the dealership until 2 a.m. He had not slept. He wanted to know if I would talk to him later in the week. He had not used the word sorry. He had used the word talk, 1 from Daniel Reyes, 2 sentences. Sophia's sleeping, thank you for the example. I answered Linda first because Linda was the easiest. I told her I had gone. I told her she had been right. I told her I would tell her the long version on the phone in a few days. I did not answer Calvin yet. I would. Not yet. I answered Daniel the way you answer a senior chief, with economy. The example was hers. I just stood next to it. Recognition delayed long enough becomes irrelevant. But it never becomes harmless. That is the part of all of this I most wish I had known earlier. I would have spent less of my life building the splint. If you have been the strong one in your family, the one nobody thinks to ask, leave me a comment and tell me. I am not going to fix it for you. I am going to read it. I want to know who you are. I want to know how long you have been carrying what you have been carrying. And if you watch these stories for the kind of company that does not require you to be small, I would be glad if you stayed. There are more of these. We tell 1 a week. A note before you go. The Navy careers in this story, the Destroyer Command, the Strike Group Flag, the humanitarian extra instructions are the kind of careers real women have lived in the last 20 years, in the actual United States Navy. More of them than most Americans know. There are about 310,000 women veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan era alone. A great many of them have come home to families who, like the family in this story, did not learn how to ask the right questions. If somebody in your house served, and you have never had the long conversation with her, the one where you ask, and you do not flinch, and you do not steer her back to safer water. Tonight is a good night to start. If she is having a hard time, the Department of Veterans Affairs runs a confidential line for women veterans, 1-855 via woman. That is 1-855-829-6636. I am not a psychologist. Nothing in this story is mental health advice. I am a person who wanted to tell a story about the silence that runs in some families until somebody finally breaks it, and about how the breaking is almost never as clean as you want it to be. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people who quietly took care of you.